welcome to another edition of Strategic Moves with Lou. My name is Mike Hendren. I'm a radio talk show host. I'm a licensed real estate agent as well. And with me over here to my right is Lou Italis. She's the owner-broker of Strategic Realty here in Wichita Falls, Texas, and the host of the show. I'm
You're
just
the DJ.
I'm the DJ something or the other. I don't know what I am here anyway. Why am I here? No, I know why I'm here. Anyway, glad to have you back with us once again. And we are in this ever-evolving world of real estate. Good grief. Yeah. Things are happening fast.
1 week later, and everything's kind of slowed down a little bit.
So I saw, and someone had brought this up with me on the radio show a while back, is that, within the last couple of weeks, that lumber futures had fallen like 60, 70% off their highs of 3 or 4 months ago. And they're like, yeah, but OSB is still like $37 a sheet. I'm like, yeah, it is. I said, it takes a while for Wall Street and Main Street to catch up with each other. Yeah. So it's going to be
trickle down.
It's going to be several more months. These lumber yards and building warehouses and so forth, they're still going through inventory that they bought at really high prices a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. They got to burn through all of that before the new stuff comes in at a potentially lower price. We'll see how that goes. So, don't get real excited just yet. It's going to take a while for everything to level out, but it looks like it's starting to level out a little bit.
A little bit, and I think our market is going to start to slow down. I mean, Brady here was telling me that, as far as appraisals are concerned, he is not seeing any slowdown, but we are seeing a slowdown in. Well, I guess we have an uptick of listings. So, like right now, if you were to look at it, there's like 220 listings. Yeah. Whereas, 3 weeks ago it was 120. Yeah. So
and we have had as few as 80 or 90.
Mm-hmm. We've had some really bad. In the last couple of weeks, we have had quite a few listings, which is good because we're still not anywhere near where we were before. I mean, we were at 800 or 900 listings at any given time. Well,
and we still got people relocating to our area from other parts of the country. I've talked to 2 people in the last 2 days that are moving here from the West Coast, from California. And they're looking for properties here, and
it's still happening.
It's still happening. Well, and one that actually has already relocated to Texas from California, but wants to relocate to our local area. So, and for those of you watching from that don't live in the local area or listening who aren't in the local area, if you're listening to us on radio, Wichita Falls, Texas, we're a couple hours northwest of Dallas, a couple hours southwest of Oklahoma City. We're right where
Little Mill spot.
Yeah, we're right where US 287, I-44, and US 281 converge. That's where we are. And the census numbers came out, the preliminary numbers came out for the redistricting data, and it showed we actually lost population.
Really?
Which I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
I've looked at those numbers, and I've wondered in the past decade if maybe we lost a lot more, and maybe in the past handful of years we gained that back. I wonder if that's a possibility.
So the data that came out was
maybe during the
drought.
During the drought, we might have lost a pretty good tick.
I think we probably did in the early part of the decade, 2010, 2011, 2012. We probably did lose a few people, but the numbers that they released were from April 2020. I think we've probably gained at least 1,000, 1,500 people over the course of the year since that data was fresh.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay. And you got to keep in mind, COVID. Too, the count last year, the census count was totally screwed up because of the pandemic. They got started late, and there's a lot of people they probably didn't reach. There's a lot of people that just wouldn't respond.
Yeah, because, I mean, if we're not allowed, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, they were, a couple, 3 months late getting into the actual work, A lot of the mapping.
I don't remember anybody sending me anything.
See, and I've heard that from people.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember anybody getting me. I don't remember getting anything.
See, I've heard other people say I don't remember getting the packet in the mail because they'll send you an envelope with that you can fill out, and do it the old-fashioned way. And then if they don't hear from you online or they don't get the packet back from you,
they're supposed to knock on your door.
They send out the enumerators.
Never that. Well, I mean, I'm never
Are
home
you the reason
either.
why we went down
I
in
know,
population?
Yeah.
I mean, unless they came to my job, they weren't going to find me.
Yeah. Well, and when and the way they would do it is, so if an enumerator came to your house and you didn't answer the door, then what they would do is they would leave what's called a notice of visit on your door that would say, hey, we came by. They have a number on it that's assigned to your address. And it would basically say, hey, we came by, you weren't home, we need to talk to you, we need you to answer some questions for the census. Okay? And I know there's a lot of people out there that had apprehensions about the census. Folks, it's a constitutional thing. We've been doing the census since 1790, every 10 years. It's in the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, I think, or maybe it's Article 2, Section 1. I can't remember which it is. But anyway, it's a constitutional thing. You're supposed to do it. So I don't think I'm not buying the numbers that they came out with as being totally accurate. Something is amiss here. We've got all these homes selling like crazy. Traffic counts are up. Sales tax receipts are up. All of the indicators that to me would say we've gained people. Those indicators are all up.
Yeah.
You know, all these homes that we're selling around here, not everybody that's buying a home in Wichita Falls, Texas, or Wichita County for that matter, is just someone who's upgrading from their $100,000 home to a $200,000 home. Yeah. They're not all people just upgrading. There's got to be some new people coming into the market. So I
wonder if they could just tell how many people have a driver's license. I mean, can't they just count how many driver's licenses we've got floating out there in Wichita Falls?
Well,
I don't know.
Not everybody who moves here gets their license changed right away, though. Some people still drive around with their California license for a year. So, you know.
Well, I think that percentage is a lot lower than the people that would respond.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some people won't respond just because they just don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, that conservatives, and it's mainly the diehard, you know, anti-government. Don't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, that's a whole other topic for a whole other show right there.
Yeah.
Good grief. Well, we got that little detail out of the way. We've got a guest in the studio with us today. Yes. We're going to talk about the appraisal processes. And Lou, why don't you introduce our guest for us?
All right, we got Brady Enlow here again with us. He's a second-time guest.
Yes.
And he
must have liked me the first time.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you hit all the right.
There you go.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Brady, you were with us early on when we started this program.
Yes.
So
It's been 4, 5, 6 months ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah. It's exciting. So is there anything new that's going on as far as the appraisal process?
I think what you and I were talking about earlier about perhaps maybe just a slight slowing down. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a couple of lenders, and they have indicated a lot of their contracts coming in are not over asking price like it was so common. Mm-hmm. If you actually wanted to have a chance at getting a house, you got to go over. It's still, I think, happening some, but perhaps maybe not as much.
It's more related to the kind of house it is, you know, like if it's got all the features that are the most desirable, or
and I think
completely updated, or
people are thinking a little bit more about, you know, I'm not sure. Or I've seen a few things online where the days on market are, you know, 20 days, and I'm like, what's wrong? You know, what's going on here?
Yeah, now everybody's
20
questioning
days,
that, or if
that's really not
reduced.
that much, but like compared to 1 or 0. So I've seen a lot of that.
What's
but
wrong with the house?
As far as appraisal stuff is concerned, we are staying just as busy as ever, and we're trying to keep up. And it's hard. And I sometimes get some interesting phone calls about why can't you come faster, or why are you doing this so slow? And it's because I'm so busy.
Supply and demand.
We are literally looking at 2 to 3 houses a day trying to get everything done. And
it takes time.
And
that's what we were talking about earlier too, is, you know, you are so busy because there's so few of you guys.
Yes,
it's
there's not very many here in this
industry.
market
Appraisers
area.
are not very I mean, it's almost like real estate agents. Like there's 280 real estate agents in Wichita Falls.
Wow,
and that's
I didn't know that.
Low, and then we're not all active. We're not all full time either. That's a low number in comparison with other areas like Dallas or Denton, for instance. The Greater Denton Wise Association of Realtors, they have over 5,000 associates.
I think in our market
in that little area.
I want to say there's maybe 10 to 15 of us.
So
there's
that's
not a whole lot.
that's a lot of work with very few people, and your industry is a very specialized industry where you actually do have to have the training in order for you to get your license as an appraiser.
It takes quite a bit
is pretty
more education and classes
Right.
and. Like you said earlier, like an apprenticeship where you have to train under somebody for so many hours and at least a year, depending on what kind of license level you get, of course.
And there's not a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, I want to be an appraiser."
How large of an area are you guys trying to service?
We cover Archer, Clay, Wichita. I go to Baylor.
You do?
I try not to go to Wilbarger. It's not
Montague.
I do go to Montague some on a case-by-case basis. I'll go to Baylor. I go to Seymour some.
Young.
I go to Graham on a case-by-case basis. So really just a handful of counties. And I think the underserved areas probably would consist of Baylor and Wilbarger. The further west you go, it's harder and harder to get an appraisal.
I get requests to do BPOs and stuff over in Vernon all the time, and I'm like,
well, that's difficult market area because there's no MLS.
There's no MLS over there.
So it's like
they
I'm going
used
back.
to be in our MLS system, but
some of them are, but they don't utilize it. But I go over there, and it's literally it's like appraising 30 years ago when you have to go to the agent's offices and say, hey, can I have your sales? And then you talk to the lenders and have you all made any loans? It's really hard. And so when people call for an appraisal and they're like, well, why are you charging so much? Or why don't you go over there? I'm like, well, it's a lot more time consuming and the data's not as good, really, honestly.
That's something that our association needs to work on, is fostering that relationship with those Western
it would make it much
counties.
easier.
It would make
Graham
it easier.
used to be that way.
Well, Graham should be in
but they're in
Netris
Netris.
now.
But for a long time,
and Bowie as well.
They weren't. But Graham and Bowie are now in Netris. And Seymour, they're
Seymour
in
is in Netris too.
The active agents there utilize Netris, and it makes it so much easier to go.
Well, a lot of that has to do also with the association fees, like the Realtors Association fees for the Denton. I think most of those counties are going to be in Denton, the Denton Wise Association of Realtors. Their fees are like $108 versus our fees here, which is like $230.
They're pretty high.
So,
well, and I think another thing that's important is we're busy more so than usual because of the interest rates. So a lot of people have done refinance. So whereas our typical workload is, a lot of purchase, I don't know what percentage you would say, and then a smaller percentage of refis. But with the interest rates so low, that has been a huge uptick in work in the past 18 months because it's historic low interest rates. And so it makes sense. Refi your house. And so a lot of our work has been, I guess, whatever you want to say, busy or gummed up because of the refis. And so that is another reason why things are a little bit slower, at least from our perspective. Also, another thing, as an appraiser, it's hard when certain agents in our market area, they put really quick closing times. And I think sometimes that's unrealistic.
Less than 30 days or
perhaps,
30 days.
Yeah.
So we probably need to tick up our days to more than 30.
I'm not,
because typically we do 30. That's
pretty
been
the
standard.
Yeah. I think that's hard, at least from our perspective.
It's harder.
Because, like I said earlier, I'm 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out on residential, commercial. Golly, it takes forever.
And if the appraisal doesn't come in for 3 weeks, then the loan can't get the final approval.
I'll call and get an appointment, to do the site visit, and they're like, "Well, we're closing a week before that." I'm like, are you? Maybe. I don't know, but I can't do it any faster. And so I think that is another hard, thing that we're going through right now is those quick closing dates that maybe are somewhat unrealistic in our current market conditions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we need to start increasing our closing days to at least a 45-day close. That way.
Could possibly. And I think that leads into another one of my points that I put on our my sheet of paper here about local clients versus appraisal management companies. So perhaps a local client here where, they're using a local bank, they can get an appraiser to do something a little bit faster because they're our bread and butter. They send us work and have for decades.
Like Union Square, First National Bank, American
all of
National.
them. They're all wonderful to work for. And whereas perhaps somebody's using, I don't know,
USA,
Loan Depot,
QuickenLoans.com.
I mean, whatever. We do some of the work for those people, but they're not on our top priority. And so turn times are a little bit longer. My fees are a lot higher just because they're harder to deal with. And the upload process, when I send an appraisal to the local clients, it's literally 2 buttons, click, click, I'm done. And then the others, oh my gosh, you would cringe at the process.
The
to
QC
upload.
on that is
It's horrible. And I've gotten pretty good at that to kind of know what everybody's looking for. But it's still it's more of a headache.
Right.
So
right.
all of that to say, sometimes if you use appraisal management companies or an out of town lender, it can take a lot longer.
That's another drawback to doing out of town lenders, and we always try to encourage our clients to use local lenders simply. I mean, for the main purpose is because they'll have somebody here in house that they can talk to, and we can reach out to them directly, and we know where they are. Versus, I mean, right now I'm dealing with a client that's down in that's out in California, and the lender is out in California.
Hard
so
to
I can't
communicate.
get anything done during business hours. And by the time, first thing in the morning is usually when I do all my phone calls. I have to wait until like noon before I can get a hold of them. And then, sometimes I won't get anything done until 7 or 8 o'clock at night because their hours over there. And by the time I do get something done, our hours are closed here. So I can't wait. I can't talk to the title company until the next day.
Well,
it's just so frustrating.
And there's another aspect to the appraisal management companies that I think is important for others to know, agents and brokers. There's a lot of appraisal management companies. A lot of them.
A lot of people don't really understand what that even means. I mean, an appraisal management company is somebody that is like a third party.
It's a third party. So say, for example, you use 1-800-GET-MY-LOAN or whatever. They're not going to know who to call in their Detroit office. Who can I get to appraise a property on FM 172? I mean, they don't know. So they utilize an appraisal management company who is a third party, like you had mentioned, that I guess maintain a database of appraisers. Then they go to their database or their panel and say, hey, could you do this? But here's another thing that people don't know most of the time is they'll say, okay, Enlow appraisal, you'll do it for this fee. Okay. But then they'll shop that, which, hey, it's the market. Fine. Yeah. But they'll shop that, but it could be days, weeks. I see emails where people are still trying to get something a little bit cheaper. And it's like, you could just pay the extra $50 and you could move on. There's a week.
It will delay the process whenever
so
they
they're
start shopping around.
And that's not necessarily in the benefit of the borrower or the person,
because you got a loan
they're
deadline.
paying the same. They're paying the same amount. Say they're quoted $600, and say we are going to appraise it for $500. So the AMC keeps $100, but they're going to try to find somebody who'll do it for $400 so they can pocket the difference. That's what's going on. So they're looking out for themselves a lot of the time, and it's all money driven. And so I see stuff where they'll offer low fees, and I'm like, I don't know who would even do this. $200 or $300 for a 1004 appraisal report. I'm like, I don't know. No, I'm not doing that.
And the way that it works for most people to understand is that the appraisal management company or most lenders, they'll tell you that the appraisal is going to cost $525. And then they'll hire somebody to do that appraisal for $525. Now, if they have to go to a management company, they're going to hire the management company for $525. And it's up to the management company to go out and find an appraiser that's going to do it for less than that.
Hopefully less.
So that they can pocket the difference.
Sure, that's how they're making
That's how they're going to make their money. And a lot of times those appraisal management companies, they don't have, like, for instance, like, let's say Clear Capital. I work with Clear Capital to do a lot of my BPOs. They have a database of people, of real estate agents in this area that do appraisals, or they do, BPOs. Not appraisals, but they do BPOs. And if they can't get me to do it, then they'll reach out to the next person in the line. And the same thing with those appraisal management companies. They have certain people that are already up, that have already signed up for their database, And so they'll reach out to those people first. And then if they can't get somebody to do it, then they'll reach out to somebody in that local area.
Yes.
So, for instance, a lot of people that are doing appraisals for houses for, let's say, Quicken Loans may be an appraisal company that's down in the Dallas area because that's who's in their system.
Yes.
And so that kind of also they miss out. They don't know our market here.
Yes.
People,
well, they shouldn't be
the
appraising up here. I mean, as my sheet says, we follow
within
use
50
path.
hours. Yeah, I mean 50 miles or something like that.
Well, it's not necessarily. It's just geographic competency, and so if they've never appraised here, you really shouldn't. I had a guy call, and he was doing a handful of appraisals, and he wanted access to our MLS, and I'm like. Should you be doing that if you don't have access on a regular basis? Like, do you know what's going on? And so that's the fear.
With that, and that's what I was getting to, is that the people that are in the Dallas area don't know our market.
Sure.
So they're going to give an appraisal that's not going to be, what's the word? It's
may not be accurate. They may not know the nuance of a certain street that sells for more, typically historically.
Correct,
maybe they
or
use
less. Maybe the appraisal is way too high.
External influences that they're unaware of.
Yeah, so they're not familiar with the market itself, and they may just be going and they don't have access to our MLS system.
There's lots of different things.
Even if they do have temporary access to our MLS system, they're still not going to be competent in order to actually give an accurate representation of value on that subject.
Yeah, they may be unaware of a lot of the factors. And so that kind of, the AMCs or appraisal
that could
management
put your
companies,
loan at risk is what I'm saying too. Is so that, let's say you're
take longer.
Right, it'll take longer, but it'll also be like, okay, so they said, yeah, sure, your house is worth $175,000. And so you get this loan for $175,000. Well, in 2 years, you get a new job and you got to relocate, or 3 years, or even 4 years. And then you go to do a market analysis or an appraisal on this property, and now it's only worth $145,000 because that appraiser overpriced that last appraisal. You paid too much for it, and now you're upside down. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that kind of stuff happening if this market does slow down.
I could remember as I
in 2009
first started appraising in that time frame, we would do refis, years after 2008, and people would be underwater years because they paid so much. And so I hope that doesn't happen
for the first 7 years. All you're doing is basically paying interest on your loan.
Basically.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't happen. For a long time, I thought this is unsustainable. This is nuts with the price appreciation that we've seen, even in Wichita Falls, historically the most stable type place you could think of. But I don't know. I mean, perhaps we might see a softening. I don't know. But maybe we're not going to go back to those historic rates or the historic price levels. What do you think?
I honestly don't think. I mean, from a seller's perspective, I don't think that our market values are going to tank so much. I think that they're just going to kind of level off.
Yeah, that's what I hear more and more, and it makes sense
because I mean, a lot of my buyers that have overpaid for their houses right now are going to be in big trouble.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Nobody has a crystal ball, of course, and we're all using historical sales is from the appraisal perspective, and so that dictates what we're doing.
Have you experienced, I mean, a lot of the agents in the Dallas area, for instance, have been, like, I had a contract that I had to do with a waiver, an appraisal waiver, and it's very common, like almost every single transaction down there now has an appraisal waiver. I don't see that here in Wichita Falls as much, but do you see a lot of those coming in?
I have seen maybe around 5, not a whole lot considering the volume.
Well, that's good. That's good news because that means that we're not getting.
I've also heard from another lender where you were there in the room where they're getting appraisal waivers. Not like the contract they're writing a waiver, but they're getting a waiver for their loan because the house is so, I don't know, homogenous, and there's bountiful data that they don't even need an appraisal. So
they're waiving the actual appraisal itself.
Like they don't even require one for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, which that happens. There's a lot of that.
Only on conventional, though. I don't think you can do that on an FHA or VA.
I can't speak for VA, but FHA, you have to have an appraisal.
Yeah. So if you're getting a conventional loan and you do an appraisal waiver, which is the only time that you can do a waiver, but you can actually waive the actual appraisal itself.
And I will note, I mean, I am totally biased in this because I'm an appraiser.
Yeah.
You can opt to get one.
Even if you do an appraisal waiver.
Even if you have the option to do a waiver, you can still get one to make sure for peace of mind that, hey, I'm not overpaying for this.
How often do you get a call from someone who's thinking about selling their home, and they say, I want to have an appraisal done so that I have an idea of where I need to price this house?
I would say it's a very small percentage of our business, but I probably get a handful of calls a month. So people are thinking that, and I recommend it, and that way you can know exactly what an appraiser is going to go out and do.
And I would imagine, as busy as you guys have been, it's tough to get to those quickly. You got your lender appraisals.
Those are going to be on the bottom of the pile.
Those typically take lower priority.
Right.
But occasionally I have a handful of even investors. It may not be I'm selling. I have a guy that calls me, and he does a lot of flips.
Right.
And he wants to know the after repair value or as completed value. So he's buying something, and then he kind of wants to know, hey, where's my top end for this market? How much should I be putting in? So I do that frequently.
So he's giving you a list of, hey, we're going to do A, B, C, D, E.
As repaired.
Once we do this, how's this going to look for us?
Absolutely. So we
That's
do that
called an
analysis.
as repaired appraisal.
Right.
Yes. And so we do that. And
most of them are going to be as is, but you can do an as repaired.
That's correct. We can appraise stuff. However, I mean, you can appraise it. I'm going to add a 2,000 square foot addition. Or I'm going to put a jungle gym. I mean, it may not have any difference, but you can do any kind of scenario.
Adding a pool, adding a pool house.
That's another common one. A lot of people don't like those because
it doesn't add much value, right?
No.
The contributory value of adding a new pool, which the costs are very high.
Oh, yeah.
Typically,
60,
a lot of the ones,
70,000.
60, 70,000, whereas maybe the contributory value in my appraisal report based on the market data that I have might be 30 or 40.
A friend of mine just spent $45,000 to put a pool in. And I told him, I said, you'd have been better off to put $25,000 in your kitchen than you would have putting $45,000 in that pool.
And because now that pool's only going to be worth half of that.
Yeah.
I would half it.
The only time that I see truly dollar for a pool is brand new construction when the builder does it.
Yeah.
And then basically after that, you're not in our market area. You're not seeing it dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
And then
desirability doesn't trump the
what people are willing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's a very common thing as far as contributory value. You don't see dollar for dollar, and that goes with any aspect of a home. At some point, you're like, I've got 5,000 square feet. I've got a mansion. Well, you're still not going to maybe get an arbitrary $100 a square foot or whatever. You may not get that for the excess 3,000 square feet,
Yeah,
if you're overbuilt,
if it's over,
if you're overbuilt in a 2,000 square foot neighborhood,
overbuilt for the same subject.
Functional obsolescence. Yeah. And so if you're a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot house in a 2,000 square foot neighborhood, people are probably not going to pay the same.
Largest house.
Or another thing,
you're going to drop everybody else's value.
Very common in certain areas of Wichita Falls. Homes that were built in the 60s and 70s that were, by those standards, or today's standards rather, small. They built in their garages. Very normal. I just came from a house that they built in their garage. You get the extra space. But you may not get that same dollar for dollar. Like if you're comparing, like now I've got 1,800 square feet. So you're comparing to other 1,800 square foot normal houses still with the 2-car garage. It's not the same. Like you're 1,800 square feet with a built-in garage.
You just took away something that a lot of people desire. Right. And I had this conversation once with one of my clients, and we were talking about the square foot, price per square foot, and how.
Oh boy, that's a good one.
We could be talking about that forever, right? Yes. He was like, well, the house next door to me sold for $160 a square foot, so mine should sell for $160 a square foot, and I'm like, it doesn't quite work that way. Yes. It's all about you could have one house like a 3,000 square foot house that sold for $120 a square foot, and then a 1,400 square foot house that sold for $170 a square foot.
Yes.
The disparity in the square footage from one house to the next, right in the same neighborhood, can be pretty significant. So you can't really base your determination of value on the square foot price per square foot.
100%.
And to that end, for example, so I had a guy tell me the other day that they built a house back in 2012 or 13, and their lumber cost them $60,000. And just for the fun of it, they went back and looked and priced it in today's prices. That lumber would cost them over $120,000 in today's prices. Wow. It's doubled. How has this sharp increase in the cost of construction impacted how you guys appraise a property, or has it had any impact at all?
That is a very good question. And so we have several tools in our toolbox, or whatever you want to call it, where we can address that.
Yeah.
So in our approach to value, we have three approaches: the sales, the income, and the cost. So when it's brand new construction, people should be doing the sales approach, because that's everybody bases,
That's the most
sales.
common
It's
type
the
of
principle
appraisal.
of substitution. That's what everybody looks at. But when it's brand new construction, you're also looking at cost.
Right.
So we're utilizing cost data that is supposed to be reflective of the current market conditions. So instead of using a cost book from 2005 or 2012 or whenever that was,
Right.
our new cost data should reflect those changes. And so when we complete our appraisal report, it should reflect that. But as far as the sales approach, how we are keeping up with the changing market conditions, it's time adjustments. Like I said earlier, Wichita Falls is a historically very stable market, and we haven't had to utilize time adjustments. However, with rapidly
From January
before
if you had a sale from before January,
yes, it's
that
outdated.
price is going to be up.
And
It's going to have to be adjusted.
And so we're making time adjustments, and I've gone as upwards of 1% per month in certain neighborhoods.
Wow.
And so, for example, perfect one, in a neighborhood near the stadium, a home sold in January or December of 2020, and has sold again since for a significant price increase.
Right.
So we go in there, and boy, when I have something like that,
Those make it
it's
very
the appraiser's
hard
heyday. I'm like, okay, if anything changed, no. I interviewed the agents, nothing's changed. So technically, that's the market appreciation rate. So I'll go in there, get the price difference from the two sales, divide that by the amount of time that's passed, and then that gives you your appreciation rate, which you can apply to other sales. So
To your comps, yeah.
Yes. So that allows me to hopefully represent what the current market conditions are in an appraisal. So if I have a dated sale, I apply those adjustments, and that's how you count
That's a
for
good
that.
point. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you have to have, you as an appraiser have to show justification for that
100%.
for
People-
that difference.
Our reports are heavily scrutinized by people who are just buyers and sellers and agents and lenders, who may not know exactly what we do, and also underwriters, appraisal
And FHA,
reviewers,
yeah.
FHA. Everybody looks at this, so I can't just do whatever I want and just make some number up. It may look like it in the report, but it's, at least with our reports, it's heavily calculated and backed up. And our reports are pretty long. I don't know if
those Fannie Mae appraisal reports.
Yes. Well, even then, but like I have a 3 to 4 page addendum in every single appraisal report where I'm going through and analyzing the neighborhood, the price appreciation, and explaining how I derived my adjustments and the time adjustments, like we just spoke about.
Distance adjustments.
Yes, there are
Everything.
lots of things in there that we outline, and I know they're really long and nobody actually reads them. Unfortunately, let's look at the number.
I actually do.
I hope people do.
actually
I spend a lot of time on those, and I hope people read them.
Whenever I get an appraisal, I like to see the comments, and I like to see, like how you got to your value based on the comps that you provided.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
I appreciate that. I'm glad somebody reads them. Sometimes I
that's
feel like
an
nobody
education.
does.
That teaches us how this market is.
Sure.
you
And
know?
adjustments vary
Yeah.
from different market segment to different market segment. Certain neighborhoods, a bathroom adjustment's going to be a lot more. Or I just did an appraisal the other day where a house had over 5 bathrooms, and I didn't make an adjustment.
Too many crappers.
I didn't make an adjustment over 4 because I didn't have really good data to suggest that, like, does anybody care if you have more than 4 in this particular neighborhood?
I
and
do.
I couldn't figure out.
I wouldn't buy it.
And so I couldn't derive an adjustment, and so I didn't make one.
Yeah.
Because I felt like 4 is what's standard in this
value.
area. It's not adding any more value. And so I didn't make an adjustment. So even it had
at
5.
some point, it's got to decrease the value.
Sure.
If it got too many crappers, to me, it's a no go.
Well, it didn't necessarily decrease in this one, but
exactly. Especially if it's like you have 4 bedrooms and you got 7 bathrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, the despair. I have one house that actually had one bedroom. Each bedroom had its own bathroom, and then they had additional bathrooms because they had guest rooms on. Or guest bathrooms on 2 different sides of the house. So it was like, are you
functional obsolescence?
Yeah.
Is it overbuilt? Those are things that we analyze in our appraisal report. And as we were saying, the time adjustments, our adjustments are not made up. They're based on paired sales where you're comparing.
Right.
Hey, this house with the pool is the same floor plan by the stadium, and another one with the pool sold for $15,000 more. Well, hey, in a perfect world, your pool adjustment's $15,000. So paired sales, historical data that we see, cost data. I also look at cost less depreciation. What it would cost new, less depreciation of its age. You calculate those things. And also another huge thing that we have called you many times, saying, hey, what can you tell me about that house? Interviews. I call and text people all the time. Trying to get some insight because you guys are on the front lines. I'm always way back in the process. I'm trying to figure out, and so
I'll
you
do
guys
that too. Whenever
have
I
good
get
information.
If I get a BPO,
If
I get a BPO that I got that's listed, for instance, and there's a real estate agent involved, and I'll call the real estate agent and say, why am I doing this BPO? Is it because it's a repo? Is it a short sale, or are they refinancing? Or there could be any kind of scenario. Obviously, they're selling the house, but there's always different scenarios, and different scenarios are going to give you different insight on how you're going to do that appraisal.
Well, guys, we've run a little bit long here. We're gonna have to.
See, I'm telling you,
we
could talk about this kind of stuff forever.
Do 3 hours on this.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and
we can have you back next week or now.
Yeah, we need to have you back soon because we've got a lot more ground we can cover.
Sure, there's a lot of
obviously
things,
there's a lot more territory we can cover. So thank you very much for being here, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. If people want to reach out to you with any kind of questions or whatever, how do they do that? How do they get in touch with you?
You can go to our website. It's enlowappraisal.com. Or you can call our office, 940-322-9925.
All right. Be sure and check out our website, strategicrealty.net. And if you've got a house you want to sell or if you're looking to buy, either way, we can help you out. Give us a call, and we'll be glad to help you out. 940-689-7900. Good grief.
Subscribe, like, and share.
I got too many numbers floating around up here, y'all. We'll see you next time. Take care.